Hello, everyone. Thank you for making it today. I'm glad our panel is at 1 p.m. because if it was earlier, many of you would be asleep or still having the after effects of last night. So thank you for being here. My name is Nishant, and I'll be the host for this panel today. I represent Bloxbridge. We are a consulting firm. We focus on public relations strategy for cryptocurrency mining companies. I've been advising cryptocurrency mining companies since more than 8 years now. And we bring subject matter expertise and historical context to advise our clients. Can we start with introductions of the panelists, beginning with Chris?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Chris Manzano. I'm with Bitmain, and we are a distributor. We are a manufacturer of the leading miners on the market. And I've had the opportunity to travel around and visit mines across the world and just live a great adventure.
Hi, I'm Kristy, aka Ogata Girl. Do technical advisory for Valkyrie Investments as well as technical advisory from Merkle Standard. I have had my hands in the mining industry for a while and just kind of float around the space and help people.
Thanks, Kristy.
Hi, everybody. This is Johnny Yao. I'm representing Canaan. Canaan is an Asic chip designer in the industry. Now we have customers in North America, Asia, let's see, across the global customers, and very glad to be here. Have a short discuss with everybody.
Oh, Canaan is also the first ASIC to market.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Hey, I'm Mike Francis with Distributed Ledger, the CEO, and we provide infrastructure services to the industry, mostly to institutional and enterprise clients.
Thanks. So our topic is state of the ASIC market. We'll try to stick to the topic because there are many panels today about mining and other issues relating to mining that will be covered in those panels. I would love to know, because of the experience that each panelist brings here, about the state of the current ASIC, starting with what are the current ASICs available, when are the shipping available, when is the earliest shipping available, what is the dollar per terahash that is current. Starting with Chris, would love to know about Bitmain's current offerings.
Okay, so our newest model, we have two directions that we go with our miners. We have the S19 XPs, which are going to be shipping in Q3 and Q4 of this year. And those are our most efficient air-cooled miners. So it's 21.5 terahash, watts per terahash. And we also have our hydro miners. So with our hydro miners, we have a hydro container, and that can hold 210 hydro miners. And we have different series of miners coming. So the one that's coming the soonest is going to be our S19 Pro Plus hydro. And then we also have the S19 XP hydro coming next year. So these are the latest ones on the market, and if you have any questions about getting them, we can always connect later, and I can help you get more information.
Kristy, could you inform us about various other ASIC makers' offerings right now, because there are so many these days?
There are many.
Maybe only 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
Leaving Canaan and Bitmain because
I think an honorable mention is definitely, Watts Miner with all of their rigs, but probably not the person to talk about that. Canaan, the Canaan guy.
So what's Canaan's latest offerings and about MicroBT2?
Currently, because tomorrow we are gonna do launch latest model, but it's also 12 series. At least this year, we are mainly focused on manufacturing on series A11 and A12. Because of this multi-foundry strategy, this year we should have no problem on supply, but more or less we are focused on the long-term customers. So if you have any needs, visit our site or shoot me an email. I believe currently we can satisfy most of the long-term player in the industry.
Thanks. Especially the point that you mentioned about satisfying most of the players. There are a lot of announcements being made by miners these days about buying big orders from equipment manufacturers who are fairly new to the space. And then many of these orders are also going south. They are being delayed. they can't be fulfilled on time for some other reason. I would love to know, Kristy, what are your thoughts on it, especially seeing that you know the historical context, because you've been in the space for a long time. You've probably seen the similar stuff happening in 2016 when there were pre-orders that were never delivered, etc.
Yeah, I mean, what changed between kind of 2020 and now is COVID, right? The COVID supply shock is still in effect. I think most of the fabs have kind of caught up. I think a lot of the component manufacturers have caught up, but we're still feeling the effects of the supply shock, right? And that's why there were a lot of delays. It wasn't a fault of individual equipment manufacturers. No one in this space, not just Bitcoin, but hardware in general, was prepared for COVID. Like, we never expected all of the operations to be down for 6 to 8 months. And even now, there's still cases of COVID outbreak at local plants or at manufacturing companies, and you need to quarantine, right? 14 days, and that's still in effect. Now we've got better processes in place. We've got folks that have been vaccinated. It's being handled a lot better. The supply chain is starting to catch up, and things are kind of calm right now, which is good. So I think definitely this year and next year, fingers crossed that we don't get another major variant, but we shouldn't see any more disruptions in the supply chain. It should be quite stable. But I mean, 2016 and 2017 and 2018 were completely different. It was due to overwhelming demand and the manufacturers and the supply chain not understanding where this demand was coming from and not having prepared in advance for it. And also, as you know, you get plenty of people that come in and say, yeah, I'm gonna drop $500 million on silicon today, and they actually don't have the capital. So it took a lot of people time to verify, is this demand real and where is it coming from? Now the industry has just really caught up. People are educated, people understand mining way better. So I think we're not going to get into that situation again.
Got it. Talking about new players, now we also have some new manufacturers that are only making or selling the chips, not the whole miner. Chris, I would love to know your thoughts on all that goes on into making this chip into a miner at scale in a data center, because your company deals with doing that.
Yep, so my brother's Chris, I'm Mike. That's where I come from, is a data center world. Providing enterprise services, and we spun this company out of our telecom company. And the very first thing I saw was, man, this is the Wild West here. It was pretty interesting, all the things that were happening, but nothing was really fit for a data center at all. And then you see all these people spending hundreds of millions of dollars on machines and then sticking them in a warehouse full of dirty energy, dirty air, and no security. So the bar is set very, very low, and we have plenty of room and opportunity to improve. And things have improved significantly even since we've started the company.
What do you think are the signs that tell you about whether a manufacturer is legit or not? If the audiences were to take some points to look at when they hear about some manufacturer making a next 26 joules per terahash miner or even lower than that, what should be the things they should look out for to know whether it's a legit player?
To me, it's the evolution of any industry, and this is going to continue to evolve. And the chips themselves might become more commoditized. And what we're really looking for are companies that do business with, that care about their clients and want to help really progress the whole market. And it's not just about the almighty dollar or the Bitcoin.
What do you think, Kristy? You've been in the industry for a very long time. What do you think are the red flags when?
Biggest red flag, honestly, is people that are very skittish about kind of letting you do your technical due diligence. So contrast with, if you're going to, as a customer, go in and purchase hardware from one of the major suppliers, right? Whether it's Bitmain or even skipping out of Bitcoin, if I want to go and purchase a bunch of GPUs, I'm going to go and talk to probably the product manager and probably their engineering team, right? I have a ton of questions. Biggest red flag in this industry right now is people that are hiding everything under NDAs and contracts, and they're not willing to share details. A competent team should be able to completely open their books. They should let you, ask questions, walk you through their floor plans, their clock trees, how they're handling things. If they're not doing that, that's the first red flag. The second is if they can't answer really basic questions about the supply chain. Like, who are your suppliers? Who's doing your actual chassis? Who's doing your thermals? Are you doing that in-house? If they can't even have an intelligent conversation with you about how they're going to cool this chip, that's also a big red flag. Third is lack of understanding of this industry. It's not just building a SHA-256D ASIC, it's what do miners actually want? How are they using these devices? What are some of the pain points right now in the industry, and how are these people addressing them? And then the fourth is if it's a legit clone of either Bitmain, Canaan, or WhatsMiner's performance, major red flag. And anything below that performance, you just need to be incredibly skeptical of. But white flags, good things, is if the team is legit, if they answer all your questions, if they're pretty transparent and open with what they're doing. Honestly, if people in the hardware industry understand that there are not too many secrets, you can easily reverse engineer and tear down a chip and figure out everything, right? It's better to get that first mover advantage, be very honest and upfront with what you're doing, how you're competing, and just run at it. Big white flag, and I'm actually happy to say that there are some people coming into this industry that have exhibited those white flags. So Intel is one, and then there's a few other stealth companies that are out there lurking, very much trying to do right in this space, which is good to see.
That's good to know. These red flags are, I think, same, and they keep coming up whenever there's a bull market like now. So, Johnny, Canaan was the first manufacturer to take an ASIC to market. Mm-hmm. Canaan has been there for a long time. Where do you think is the industry headed from here? How is the technology in ASICs evolving? We've been at 7 nanometer for a long time now. When do you think we will see the next biggest miner or the most popular miner with a 5 nanometer chip or lower process node? Or maybe we don't even see that. Maybe there's some other side that the evolution is going. What do you think is the next stage in development of ASIC technology?
Yeah, I said that we have been in this industry for a while, right? So here I would like to talk a little bit more about engineering process instead of this 5 nanometer will goes to the market. Because as a major component, the chipset inside the miner, the biggest challenges coming from engineering for now. You don't know how the products will move out of lab to the manufacturing process. And also in the coming 2 years, we still see the supply constraints on the fabs. So basically, doing all those high performance architecture, doing this high performance versus this power consumption will take a bit longer time when it goes down for this chips processor. So what we are doing now, basically we are gonna to announce a product only when all those testing is done inside you. We will announce to the customer when we think this is going to the market. For now, inside we see for this minus 5 nanometer process, we have done meaningful process on performance and also this efficiency part. But let's see when the market is ready to take this, and I cannot foresee if it is this year or next year, because my assumption is the same situation with Bitmain and other manufacturers. We are all doing on the engineering side and waiting for the market to see the right time to let it go.
What do you think from Bitmain, Chris? When do you think the market will be ready for the next nanometer node or the next generation of ASIC miners?
So I'm going to echo what was spoken here by our partner. We don't think that the focus should be on the nanometer of the chip size, because as we know in the market, okay, let's be honest, everybody here has been doing something with the miners that they get. It's not like everybody just runs the miner stock. So we know that everyone's been experimenting, everyone's been using different solutions. So you can get a lot of power and a lot of efficiency from a miner depending on the system that you build around it. So I think the next step, what we're seeing with MicroBT and what we're seeing with our own miners or the Hydro systems, companies are coming out with complete systems. So it's not necessarily the efficiency of the individual miner, but how all the parts work together. So adapting the miners and the systems to particular environments and adapting things to the way that you run your miners. In Texas in particular, you're looking at demand response. So turning your miners off when it's better to send that power to the grid or when that's needed. So there are a lot of changes that are happening to the way that miners operate and the environments that they operate. And I think that going forward, we're going to see companies focusing more on offering a simpler solution to everyone in the market, because before that you had to go and experiment. I have to check this and try this and do all that to get the most out of the machines that you're using. But in the future, I think companies are going to help you do that, and they have a lot more data, and they have the engineering background to do a really great job of that. So you're going to see every company's particular flavor of what they believe the best system should be. So it'd be cool for everyone to learn as much as they can about what's out there on the market and find the one that works best for you in your own environment.
Oh, that's a very good point. Something that it also brings up is you're talking about evolution where these machines are becoming more comprehensive. They are including a lot of end solutions for the data center. But on the other hand, you have players like Intel coming in, which are just selling the chips, where everything else has to be taken care of by the data center itself. Francis, I would like to know what you think, because you operate and run and even build these data centers for your clients. So what do you think is the best way forward? Is it one of them? Is it a hybrid approach or something else?
I think it's a hybrid approach. Necessity breeds innovation, and we are, like we were talking about the supply chain shock, right? So now you have that we realize that a lot of our chips are very centralized in where they're processed and built, and that is becoming quickly decentralized, and there's a lot of players investing in building chips, right? Now the chip's just a piece of it, so it has to be put together, and you're probably going to have a lot of new manufacturers springing up that are building systems with whoever's chips, whether it's Bitmain's or Micro or whatever, anybody's. And the very first thing that we used for mining, actually, we were mining Monero and ended up with Haven using a processor made by Intel called Xeon Phi, and it was and we had a lot of fun with those, and we still have a ton of them running. But the reason we went with that at the beginning, and I personally wasn't a fan of ASICs to start with, because I thought that it's a chip that only does one thing, right? And the way I think about that has changed significantly now. But then it was like, I want a server I can stick into a rack. So, we started looking around, and we ended up finding a guy that actually worked for Intel. He's now on a shareholder in our company named Ingo Wald, and this guy wrote some crazy code for these processors. But the problem with it is no one else knows how to write the code that Ingo wrote for these things. So I guess what we're going to see is like I said, a hybrid approach. Not everybody's putting their stuff in a data center. Not everybody can afford to, run miners. We have a group internally that is working on something for residential, people that want to, they want to do some mining in their home and not heat their house with it. So anyway, we're going to see a ton of innovation in the next few years, and we probably have no idea what that's really going to look like.
These are exciting times.
Yeah.
So you touched upon home mining, and we've been hearing a lot of news about isolated cases of home miners and some isolated experiments about bringing mining to homes where the heat can be used to heat pools or farm marijuana, etc. I wonder what your thoughts are on home mining. Do you think we will see ASICs that make it profitable again for home miners? That's also something that Zach Dorsey talked about, he wants to bring home mining back. What do you think, Francis?
I think there's a lot of interest in that. There's quite a few barriers, and we all know that. Power consumption and heat and generated and all that stuff. But we're going to overcome those things, and they will be overcome. I think the interesting part of it is finding other things that we can do with that amount of computing power, and someone's going to do something with that eventually. Not just solving, a problem in hashing, but actually using that computing power, and there's a lot of it, to do something else too.
What do you think, Johnny? Does Canon have plans to bring home mining back?
Actually, I see a lot of interesting trying from our customer. They are more rely on this immersion cooling solution, try to use that to the home mining. But I have not seen the big usage of that. Some of the customers in North Europe, they are doing very interesting stuff for this reduce those heat, but specifically not in the home. But I see maybe in the near future there was some small solution can bring that back to home.
What do you think, Kristy? Will we see a reemergence of home mining?
I mean, we already have it. It's there. It's quite active, and if you know where to look on Twitter, or if you even talk to customers of Compass Mining, et cetera, you'll find the home miners. What's interesting now is part of the strategy around Intel selling raw chips and other players selling raw chips is because it opens up third-party manufacturers to come in and build unique solutions like, let's have a space heater that mines Bitcoin. Let's have a toaster that mines Bitcoin. Remember the Bitfury light bulb that mined Bitcoin? Yeah. I think what we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years is a very slow trend of people caring a lot about how do we decentralize Bitcoin at a global scale? How do we ensure the hash rate is in every home instead of just clustered into a few public companies, which can easily, an executive order in America could easily hurt a lot of that.
We've seen that happen in another country already.
We have, and yes, we like to say that that won't happen in America, and America's nice and stable and yada yada, but things happen. New leaders get elected, things happen. And for Bitcoin's future, we want to make sure as much of that hash rate is in the hands of individuals as possible. We can't lose that decentralization narrative of what makes Bitcoin so important, so valuable as a financial system. And so in order to do that, you need to start thinking about, okay, how do we start moving hash rate into everything, not just into an actual ASIC, but into other, components in your house. So at least in Washington State, I've been quite impressed by seeing the amount of miners that are using old ASICs, S7s and S9s to heat their homes. So they actually do some really cool retrofitting of their furnace to push hot air through. I think we're all familiar with the infamous Bitcoin hot tub, the Shah Spa, which is awesome. But I also see quite a lot of folks in Washington doing that as well with their hot tubs.
She's talking about Washington State, not
yes.
the people in Washington.
Yes. So we're starting to see a lot of that experimentation and innovation, and just having access to raw chips will encourage and promote that. And that's where we want to go in the future. We need enterprise miners, they're very important, but we also need a large percentage of the hash rate to be in the hands of individuals. Because then, absolutely, a country cannot kill off Bitcoin. It is impossible to kill it when it's in the hands of 10 million people versus just a few companies.
Agreed, 100%. I wish everyone saw that. So, Chris, Does Bitmain have any plans on bringing home mining products or making investments in that area? Or you may have some stories to share from your customers.
I have my perspective on this. I think every company at some point or another has had their take on home mining or has had the idea about it. I don't know what future plans there are with this, but if we get into it, home mining, a lot of it is about the philosophy of Bitcoin. I mean, if you're really a believer in Bitcoin, you want decentralization, you want everyone in the world to be able to learn about this great technology. So when I look at home mining or ways to make home mining feasible or ways to do it in a great way, I look at it in two directions right now. You can do home mining, but I look at it more from a learning perspective. So if you just want to have like a Raspberry Pi or something that lets you, or even just mining Bitcoin on your PC, just to learn about it, I think that's pretty cool as an idea, just being involved with the process. And also another way is you can still own miners and do kind of long distance home mining, because there are a lot of companies out there that are getting retail clients involved with the mining process by offering them hosted space, and that's their miner. They can go see it. So is that home mining? I mean, you're still a retail miner. Maybe it's not exactly, but maybe there are middle grounds, and there are other ways and solutions that people can do. Maybe a community can come together and have a small little co-op, and then every person has their miner then, and then you have more people involved. Because I think that right now, with the way the industry is going, we need as many people involved with it as possible to basically make it a better place for all of us.
I remember Bitmain had this Ant router, which was a Wi-Fi repeater that also mined Litecoin and Bitcoin, and Bitmain used to give them out for free like swag at these conferences. It'll be great to have free swag from manufacturers again at conferences that mines Bitcoin, even if it's small scale.
I have heard this suggestion. I'm gonna take this. I'll seriously consider this. So.
Bring back USB miners, man. We want USB miners.
I'm gonna make a note. So.
Now we've been talking about decentralizing Bitcoin by having machines that anyone can use anywhere, even at home. What about decentralizing the tech itself, like what even Jack Dorsey recently talked about, which has been talked about since the time Satoshi used to be involved, which is open source ASICs for Bitcoin mining. Where do you think the industry is headed, especially your thoughts on it, Kristy, because you also pioneered a new proof of work for Ethereum, and you have a lot of expertise in that area.
You can't open source, I shouldn't say you cannot, but it is quite impossible to open source the TSMC libraries, like your actual design files for the chip. But you can open source everything else around the ASIC itself. So you can open source the firmware, as we're seeing with the Brains team. You can open source the thermals, the chassis designs, the PSU designs and schematics, every other component, but it is the actual chip that is going to be difficult to open source. And I think we need progressive decentralization of the tech. I think where everyone fails is where they try to make it binary, right? Like it's open source or bust. It has to be a gentle progression. So let's start with, selling individual chips that will get you access to schematics, design files, manuals, so you can write your own firmware. That is a step in the right direction. We start with, open sourcing PSU designs. Let's standardize on a universal power backplane for data centers that we can all use, schematics, et cetera. The patent for that.
Data center designs that open source.
Yeah, exactly. NVIDIA and AMD both have these HPC kind of designs that are standardized that they deploy around all other data centers. Why don't we have something like that for Bitcoin? We come together as a mining, as a group of miners and say, okay, here's our universal design to enable other people to rapidly deploy. And we're going in that direction with containers. And I think 2 to 3 more years we'll get standardization there. I don't think there is, I don't think there's a lot of benefit to open sourcing the chip design. You need to create opportunities where everyone in this space can build a business. And if you take away kind of the innovation and the optimization around chip design and around ASICs that would kill the business model for a lot of major players who, reinvest their capital back into this industry. So I don't think there's a lot of benefit there. It's not like the moment that you have a SHA-256D competitive design, you can just walk into TSMC and get allocation, right? That's never going to happen. So there's more to it than that. That's my take.
That's a very good insight. So now you got me wondering, if the process node is very high, say 40 nanometer, for which there are foundries everywhere in the world, could you have an open source design so people can just create their own?
Tinker, right?
Yeah.
So I think actually that'd be a good initiative for Bitmain, Canaan, and WhatsMiner to come together and do a open sourced 16 nanometer or 22 nanometer design, and then do that in collaboration with universities, with your computer engineering universities here in America, to teach the next generation of hardware developers about Bitcoin and about the technology. So we don't have to keep reinvesting and learning. Like this, there's so much redundancy right now in the hardware space, it's really frustrating. Whereas coming at it from the software industry, where we're open source by default, we learn from all the mistakes and what everyone else has done. We don't have a lot of that redundancy. So I do think that's a great idea. Like, let's do a 22 nanometer, something that's not going to be competitive, just for learning and to let people bootstrap and, start tinkering.
Are you making notes for recruitment marketing?
I think I agree with this, because it is really kind of waste of time every time you are starting from scratch. And it's not healthy for the whole ecosystem. Nowadays in the industry, it is hard to find some talent, just because compared with software, this hardware design is really, really expensive for everybody. So open source for some old generation ones is a great idea, at least from my side, I answer.
Francis, what do you think is the potential for open source designs for mining data centers?
Well, I think it's huge. I think, as kind of like 5G, 5G has gone almost all open source. Pre that, everything was proprietary hardware, proprietary boxes, very expensive, no real sharing of information. And I think we very likely will, by default, end up going that path in the mining industry. And with equipment that's far more modular too, that maybe it's a PCIe card that you slap into a server, then I can run whatever server I want and put my chips in a server, or standardization. You were talking about standardization. I mean, across the board, there's so many areas where we could use some standards. And
especially data center design.
Yeah, definitely. You can pack a whole bunch of miners into the space of one rack, right? But the amount of power that rack uses is way more than anybody's expecting to use in a data center.
Or the heat generated.
Yeah, we almost burned down the first data center we tried to mine in.
Well, I think a lot of people in the audience have that experience.
Probably, yeah.
All right, so I think we have time for one more question that I have for the panelists here, which is, it seems like it's a must, which is something related to environment. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on changing the proof of work.
No.
Well, I mean, what your thoughts are on the cost of changing the proof of work?
I think anyone who is suggesting to change Bitcoin's proof of work simply does not understand how elegant Bitcoin's design is. For any cryptocurrency, you need taps and sinks. You need a creation point of wealth for coin issuance and a way to get coins in the hands of markets, and then you need a sink, something that locks up or takes wealth out of the ecosystem, that keeps the resource scarce. This is an economics, by the way. This is like video game design 101 as well. And Bitcoin has the most elegant sink I've ever seen, because it's not just infrastructure like Asics, it's the data centers as well. And that keeps the value of Bitcoin, afloat. And so while I love the innovation of, proof of work changes like PWX, which is now a BIP, like I appreciate that as an engineer, it's not right for Bitcoin. If we change the proof of work now, you would damage all of the miners that have deployed and invested tons of resources into Bitcoin, right? You would force all of the mining pools to readjust their stack. You'd kill off a bunch of equipment manufacturers. Like, that's not being a good partner to the ecosystem. People have outlaid and deployed capital into mining because they believe in this ecosystem. Changing the proof of work algorithm would be really reckless. Now, do I think that, once we're all dead in 70 years, we probably should adjust SHA-256D to maybe be a little bit quantum resistant? Yeah, but that won't be my problem then. I'll be dead. So, but yeah, I think it's really reckless, and it's interesting because, again, as an engineer, you appreciate that kind of stuff, and it's great to explore it, but we need to come back to why SHA-256D is so critical. And then on the energy consumption, it doesn't matter what proof of work algorithm you switch to, it's relative, right? If we switch to something that is 50% more energy efficient, miners are just going to go buy 50% more hardware and consume.
You see that every time there's a new Asic,
yeah,
which is 4 times more efficient than the previous version.
Exactly, and that just gives you more room to deploy more hardware. So we're not really saving anything, we're just getting more and more dense. And then someone who's very big on the ESG narrative will find a way to complain about how we're wasting or destroying the environment there as well.
I've heard about criticism about even the waste that is produced from mining hardware. That's a separate criticism that will probably increase after we've taken care of the environmental criticism. All right, with that, I would like to thank everyone who came here. Kristy made a very good point about when we are talking about changing proof of work to proof of stake for Bitcoin to save the environment, we need to think also about the Bitcoin community and not just the community who has nothing to do with Bitcoin. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.